Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to the special coverage of the off-cycle elections holding in Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo State. And we know that this is about to happen just right about now. My name is Ayuba Ilya, and we'll be taking you through what's going to be happening today and getting all the feelers from the field for you this morning. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Nigeria, and thank you most kindly for joining us for what promises to be a very engaging, very perhaps politically tense atmosphere today across these states that have had some quite notable and memorable election experiences in the past. For some of these states, this is the first time, or for one of those states, this is the first time they're ever going to have an off-cycle election, and that's Imo State. Yes. But of course, it also means that the attention around the entire country is all eyes on these three states. Yes. And we're going to try as much as we can to do our best to give you a complete picture, a true sense of what is actually happening by, giving you updates on some of these developments. So I don't know what I'm looking forward to, but I do know for sure that Nigerians are going to have a feel of what INEC has been talking about in terms of seamless elections. They've done a good job so far with the off-cycle elections, the ones in Ekiti, the ones in Oshun, the ones in Anambra, for instance. We've given them a pat on the back. Let's hope that this is another success story that we're going to have to talk about in the near future.
Yes, and another major thing to be looking out for is whether or not the outcome of the 2023 general elections will have an impact on the off-cycle elections that we're going to have. The other off-cycle elections we've had were before the 2023 general election. So we'll be looking forward to see how that will impact, as you know, in the various states, the three states that we're having these off-cycle elections. Elections for state assembly members have already been done, and also members of the National Assembly.
It's just the governorship that's up for grabs.
That is up for grabs. So you can imagine, what that will mean for all the political parties that are going to be participating in that election. We know that there are about 18 political parties, although it varies from state to state. In Imo State, in Bayelsa State, you have 16 political parties that will be contesting for that seat, and also in Imo you have 17 states, and in Kogi you have 18 political parties that will be vying for those seats. So it remains to be seen whether the power of incumbency will come to play, as we know it here in Nigeria's political parliament.
It does come to play to a certain degree, but also the reassurances that we've been getting from the two critical actors in this election. Critical because they are part of the organizational structure of the elections, and that's INEC and the Nigerian police. We get that sense that there's going to be neutrality, whatever it may be, whatever it may cost. And if that happens, the power of incumbency might only, prevail on people who actually benefit from the power of incumbency. So
and to even demonstrate that neutrality, we saw how the Inspector General of Police, decided to make some redeployments. And Imo State, for instance, the Commissioner of Police in Imo State was redeployed, perhaps to give...
In Bayelsa, yesterday, there was a protest where the women were protesting the continued stay in office of the current police commissioner. I doubt anything is going to change between yesterday and today. But also, it goes to show you that Nigerians really have put a lot of stock in the electoral process, that they want to see this neutrality play out. Because without that...
Beyond the deployments.
Yeah, beyond the deployment also. It's all about the instructions. It's all about the people who are actually put in place to do something about it when something goes wrong. What if they bury their head in the sand? What if they pretend that there's nothing happening? What if they don't provide cover? What if, they don't protect the electorate across the various flashpoints? As we do know, all of these three states have one thing in common, and that is that, fear of political attacks, because it has happened already, whether it's in Bayelsa, in Imo, or in Kogi. I mean, Kogi, up until last week, there were still attacks, just days before the elections. And unfortunately, the presence of the police has become a necessity right now before we can even conduct any meaningful process in this country. So it's already 5 minutes past 8.
Yes, one of the issues also that have been raised so far is civil society organizations are making the call about over militarization of the elections in those states. Now, it's a bit dicey, and, you know, I can imagine that the police will be in a dilemma somehow, because in one breath, you want you know, the conduct of a safe election that is free, fair, and credible. In another breath, people are making the case that you do not want to scare the voters to think that it's going to be a do-or-die affair, you know, and all that. So, for instance, if you look at in Imo State, for instance, from what we know so far, about 15 commissioners of police have been deployed in that state, aside the other, you know, rank and file of the Nigerian police. So, it's really a very dicey one. But then I guess at the end of the day, the target is to boost the confidence of the voters.
It's a necessity. I mean, Nigerians are used to seeing uniformed men. Unfortunately, uniformed men across our street for the past 2 decades, so to say, when we have anything sensitive going on, especially on election duty. And we've seen the numbers increase year after year because we're trying to guarantee and discourage all these attacks. We went from ballot box snatching to just attacking voters
and disrupting the polling
exactly.
units.
So I think we're gradually making progress, and I think for Nigerians, if we're able to guarantee the safety of voters on election day, we're going to see the voter turnout increase twofold going forward. But this is also a necessity. And as I was just saying, that we were just getting the information that you know, the election is about to take off as some of those polling units are beginning to take shape with the arrival of INEC staff across some of these polling units in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi State. We're going to do our best to try and get you a full picture of what is happening. But Ayuba, you were talking earlier about the number of candidates in all of these things. I think 51 in total. We only just have 3 women in the race, which in itself is not something particularly good. But then again, you look at the reality on ground and you realize that in some states it's a 2-horse race, in some states it's a 3-horse race, in some states it's even a 4-horse race or 5, depending on who you're talking to, especially in Kogi, for instance. And I bet our viewers can see that. Kogi, so these are supposed to be the top contenders, right? Dino Melai is there, the anointed candidate of the governor, Ododo is there. You also have Murtala Ajaka there. You also have Abejide in the mix. So for me, Kogi State is, I don't have any projections with regards to where this is going, but it's going to be tense, just like Bayelsa. I mean, to be president, we're trying to get back to the government house once again.
Yes, and for me, like I also mentioned earlier, is the fact that certain political parties appear to be at the disadvantage already, going by the outcome of the 2023 general elections. You know, this bandwagon thing, you know, so you find that, for instance, in some states like Kogi, you have, out of the, you know, entire number of members of the State Assembly, 22. Out of about 25 or 26, 22 of the members of the State Assembly are, you know, from the All Progressives Congress. And that automatically is expected to translate into how the mobilization for voters is going to play out. You know, they will be canvassing for
sometimes
you know,
it works
voters.
that way. Sometimes it doesn't.
But then we are ready for surprises, really. I'm really hoping to see some surprises spring up in this election. It doesn't automatically mean that the leading party in the state will be the one to take over.
At the end of the day, all we want to see is for the votes to count. Whichever way it goes, that is what democracy demands. The will of the people. Let the will of the people come to play here. And at the end of the day, we would be happy that the process is being improved upon. But also, there are some not so good developments that we've had over the past 24 hours, Ayuba. For instance, in Bayelsa, the boat conveying those sensitive materials, one of them capsized yesterday. We're happy to report that there are no casualties in that boat incident, but also still in Bayelsa, an INEC official was kidnapped just as he was waiting to get aboard one of those boats, because predominantly some of these polling units are in riverine areas, so they have to take all these boats to the various locations. And unfortunately, that individual is still in captivity. The last time we checked, we're going to try to get across to Friday so we can understand the latest development in that. But you know, one of those inevitable situations where you cannot, you know, really foresee some of these developments happening on the boat capsizing.
But then, you know, these things have happened time and again. I mean, each time there's an election, you hear similar stories like this about boat capsizing and all that. And that brings to question the availability, or I would say the logistical arrangements by INEC in some of these riverine areas, because each time there's going to be an election, you find that INEC will have to depend on, you know,
the local transportation setup,
exactly, to transport ballot papers or election materials and so on. So should we be looking into making some kind of special arrangements for people in the riverine areas? Because it's much easier perhaps for you to convey materials by road, you know, in some other parts of the country than in the riverine areas where you have to now depend, you know, on the boats and so on. And I mean, God forbid, sometimes the safety arrangements, even when you are using a local boat, what's the safety arrangement that has been made? You know, you find that some of the officials, the ad hoc officials, are left to deal with boats, the risk and everything.
And we've been talking about water safety for quite some time, and Bayelsa is supposed to be one of those states where these water transportation systems should have been perfected by now, because you have a significant part of the population living in riverine areas. And again, to your point exactly, the INEC chairman just 2 days ago or 3 days ago was, you know, in the news saying that this time around they're going to deploy 2 days earlier, especially in Bayelsa, because of these logistical challenges that they have to face, because of the difficult terrain that they have to navigate. So I'm quite surprised that, you know, this is happening, you know, hours before the polls open, because now for them to make arrangements, we're not just talking about result sheets missing, we're also talking about the bimodal voter accreditation system, the Beavers machine also, you know, falling into the river.
We're talking about
getting lost entirely. So they have to, because these things are not just there on the shelf for you to pick. As much as they have a lot of it, you know, in their storage, they have to configure it for this particular polling unit. So I just hope that there is a backup that doesn't allow for us to see some sort of delay, so that the entire exercise can be conducted in one go.
And I really also hope that the voters in those areas are not disenfranchised at the end of the day. We're talking about more than 5,000 registered voters in that axis. So INEC must do whatever it needs to do, you know, as soon as possible, to make sure that they deploy and get all the materials that needs to be there in good time as well. Because you don't want a situation where, yes, we understand that this, you know, accident happened, but then you still have to be there, you know, on time as well, because you don't want a situation where voting is concluded in other parts, hours later, you know, voting is still going on in those places. The pressure can build
on those places that have to conduct their own election out of, you know, out of sync with every other polling unit. So exactly to your point. And of course, you have to consider the political temperature, because in Bayelsa, Nimbe Basambre, for instance, has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. And you have some of those key political figures adding fuel to the fire, you know, making incendiary comments that may likely inflame, you know, the population. So, yeah, for me, is if you do this quick and easy, you stand a better chance of having some sort of record that would be welcomed by Nigerians. But if INEC drags along and then the election goes into perhaps later, you know, in the evening, or perhaps even to Sunday, then you're going to have some challenges, because
that's where already the really starts
already the feelers of, you know, the results are already coming in. So all those outstanding polling units that are yet to vote, you know, the attention will be on them, and that attention is usually negative, because you find other people who are either in the lead or who are trying to play catch up, trying to disrupt the process by getting an advantage. So it would be nice if we can just synchronize everything at a go, to have.
And I think that this is also a great opportunity for INEC to, you know, regain some kind of confidence of, members of the public with this election. They should make example with this election. We saw how the 2023 general elections, were conducted and how that dampened the morale and the confidence of many voters in the country. So perhaps this is an opportunity to make sure that the technology that is being deployed is used effectively. The IREV, and all that is to make sure. I mean, we have a story here that INEC is warning staff against compromise to upload results on the IREV. So it's very important that we see that IREV, play that role.
Everything, actually.
Expected.
Everything that is supposed to go, that is supposed to happen, should happen based on the organization as well as the protocols that have been put in place by INEC. No more excuses this time around. But to your point, I don't think whether they get it, they do a good job today, they're going to change the hearts and minds of Nigerians who already feel dissatisfied with their performance in the general elections this year. But then again, we'll just quickly take you through the headlines this morning. Much of it is about the elections, but let's get started with the Daily Trust for this Saturday, shall we? Some very interesting stories here, Ayuba, that are not election related, but also it's a Saturday, so there's some very light-hearted stories on there. Looking at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today, the biggest story is talking about an investigation. It says inside Nigeria's deadly medical quackery business, and it's talking about that situation in Jos, for instance, where the ongoing trial of one of the doctors involved in that, alongside two others, Dr. Noah Kekere, even though the Nigerian Medical Association in Plateau State has denounced him, it exposes the gaps that exist within professional service sector, for instance. It's one thing to have a quack journalist. It's a different ball game to have a quack doctor. While a quack journalist might write you a poor story or perhaps maybe say the wrong thing, a medical doctor who is not a medical doctor would cost you your life. But
Abdullah, be careful with that comparison.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying that there are certain areas where you cannot afford to compromise. Quack doctors, quack teachers, right?
I think
quack pilots.
I think either ways you just cannot afford. Yes, in either ways I think you just cannot afford a compromise. Because I recall incidents in this country where certain parts of this country were set ablaze as a result of misleading information by some journalists.
I'm not making excuses for quack journalists. I'm just saying they're not as deadly sometimes if they mess up in their work with regards to doctors, but not to make any excuses anyway. To the headlines once again, we were trained by other fake doctors according to the quacks. Very interesting story. How weak regulations aid quackery. MDCN's verification policy aids the menace. So most of the time, anyway, it's all about the money. If you can afford the certification, if you can afford to pay for the licensing, you can get your clinic, and you can conduct all sort of, procedures that you're not qualified to do, because we have the shortages publicly, but also because we have, regulatory agencies that don't do their work to make sure that whoever is prescribing drugs, is taking patients into the operation room, is actually qualified to do so.
Yes, and there's sometimes perhaps the desperation from people who need help, really. People who are sick, they just come to the hospital. They don't want to know what your pedigree is. They just want to be fine. That's all. And people don't really care. I've seen situations where nurses are considered as doctors, or are referred to as doctors. In many of our hospitals in local communities, people just perhaps study
because you see them as professionals,
health technology, and you call them doctors.
I'm getting on an airplane. I'm not going to ask the pilot, where's your license? You understand? Because you assume before he got there, somebody must have done the due diligence to make sure that he gets in that. So you see a nurse, you think she knows what she's doing. So you rely on that expertise, but sometimes we're let down. Convicts pay between 5,000 and 10,000 naira as fine, which is not stiff enough, if you ask me. So more on that story on page 5 and 6 War on Gaza, Tinubu calls for immediate ceasefire and peaceful resolution. 21 hospitals out of service in the Gaza Strip. You talk about a situation that is getting from bad to worse, and once again, that ongoing humanitarian crisis on the Gaza Strip is a reminder that, you know, the world is not really, you know, allowing us to make sense of these things, because there's no reason why this should continue. I don't know, Asma Wakili, presumably a popular actress, right, says, "I have no enemy in my acting career." Very interesting take there. INEC warns staff against compromise to upload results on IREV, deploys 46,484 officials. Oh, that's a very large deployment for just three states. NSA, police, others talk tough after skirmishes. Only 3 female candidates among the 52 contenders. Yeah. And residents raise alarm as number of homeless minors increases across Kano. Nigerians who have appeared on America's Got Talent. I just see 3 different versions of Josh Funny, who was there, and you know, it's safe to say that in the entertainment industry, Ayuba, Nigeria has arrived.
Yes.
In the true sense of arrival.
Yes.
The nominations, the Grammy nominations, are also out, and some of our notable stars are also, you know, getting the recognition that they deserve. Court stops NLC TUC from embarking on planned strike next week. This drama continues to just, you know, have so many dimensions. You know, glad to see Joe Ajero back in the news, back, you know, facing Nigerians. It's good to see that he's doing well. Let's wait and see how NLC reacts to this one. And finally, on the front page of the Daily Trust for Saturday, Saudi Arabia to invest in Nigeria's refineries, according to the federal government. Well, I hope we don't count our chickens before they hatch. I remember the UAE deal. It's still not yet, you know, a done deal. Yes, exactly, exactly. But you know, promises were made, and let's hope that our president comes back with something meaningful for Nigeria. That's it on the front page of the Daily Trust for today.
All right, so let's take a look at our other papers that we have this morning. On the Nation newspaper, for instance, you have the lead story talks about the off-cycle elections. It says tension as voters elect new Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa governors. I mean, that's needless to say. We've already touched on that. The writer says INEC warns staff, ad hoc workers against malpractices. Appeal court rejects case seeking Silver's exclusion from poll. You also have crisis hits Bayelsa LP over bribery allegations. And then at the bottom of the paper there, you have Supreme Court. Only Goba candidate can determine running mate. And above the masthead of the Nation newspaper, Saudi government to invest in Nigeria's refineries, back central bank reforms. Court restrains NLC TUC from proceeding with November 14 strike. So pretty much repetition of some of the stories we saw on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Where are the women on that lineup? But you ask yourself, these are all well-known individuals who have made a name for themselves. Let's take a look at other stories before we get back to the election coverage. Just to give you a snapshot of stories that are being reported today. On the Punch newspaper for today, federal government compiles new ambassadors list. Remember, the president pretty much dissolved the entire foreign mission, so to say, career and non-career ambassadors. So we have a list that will be out soon, according to this particular story. So I don't know, either you're the international or foreign desk, you know, editor. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll see your name in one of those lists. Court stops.
So you're suggesting I leave my love
right.
journalism.
Right. Okay. Tell me if you're not going to jump at the opportunity. NLC, court stops NLC TUC Tuesday's strike on 14th of November. But how about this one? 5.1 million voters elect in Imo Bayelsa Kogi governorship election today. I'm sure at the end of the day, the numbers are significantly lower than that, because we also have the data around the voter turnout as well as the percentage of PVCs collected. But Uzodinma Diri battle re-election, Ododo Dino Ajaka jostle to succeed Bello. Security beefed up at INEC offices. It's like a military zone in Kogi yesterday. Commission vows e-transmission of results. Some people are already saying, haven't we been here before? But let's give them the benefit of doubt. In other stories, husband molested my daughter, attacked me for confronting him. Ondo woman. I've seen too many cases of domestic abuse recently on social media, and it gives me cause to worry, really, that we have the VAP Act, we have all of these, you know, abuses in our society that need to be punished by law, but you know, it's still going on unabated, and it's just really, really sad. Hit and run driver kills Dangote worker in Lagos. Saudi Arabia to invest in Nigeria's refineries and support forex reforms. 2 killed, 10 injured in Lagos Ibadan road crash. Quite unfortunate. You can see the pictures there. That's Ashake, Burna Boy, Davido, and Arya Star, all nominated for the Grammys. All right, that's that for now. I think we have a lot more to report on Aiba regarding some of those developments, but we have in the studio already seated, ready to get to work, the one and only Mr. Kane Diamodu today to join us in the election coverage. Mr. Kane, good morning.
Thanks for having me.
You look really happy to be here. Right? I'm sure you had other plans for your Saturday, but you know, work is called, and we're happy that you've answered that call. Okay. I mean, Aiba and I were just given, you know, a sense of our mood this morning. What are you most looking forward to, you know, regarding this whole exercise?
You know, those 3 states are tricky states, and they have the propensity for violence. Leading up to elections, you saw violence there. I'm hoping we won't see that much violence in those states. The stakes, so to speak, are high. In Bayelsa and in Imo, the governors are battling for re-election. In Kogi, Yaya Bello wants to install a successor. So let's see how we go forward. But you see the political chess game is going to be rather complicated as we go forward. 1 or 2 things. First and foremost, in Imo State, the people have always chosen their governor. All the way back to 1999. Despite all the political pieces that are presented before them, somehow you find out that the people will decide who they want to vote for. And in Imo State, the pressure groups play a strong hand in seeing who comes in as governor. In Bayelsa State, I think the ex-president is going to play a major hand there. Now, who is he supporting? Is he supporting PDP, or is he supporting APC? And you also know that the ex-president and the APC candidate have a history, not too pleasant history. So let's see how that's going to play out. In Kogi State, in Kogi State, the 2 major parties used to be the PDP and the APC. Now we have the SDP actually, you know, coming out strong. And in fact, all the targets of attacks and all that have not actually been targeted at the PDP candidate. It's the SDP candidate that looks to be the threat. So when all these play out, we'll be able to see what the clearer picture is. But my fear, or my hope, is that there won't be too much violence. We won't have too much loss of lives.
Does the deployment, the security deployment, the police, the military, does that reassure you in any way? Because we were speaking to Shafiu Suleiman was speaking to people on the streets of Kogi yesterday, and they seem to be happy that the police are everywhere, keeping a tab on developments. Does that reassure you?
Yeah, it does reassure me. But you know, the point is that there are always dark spots, and in every election, not only these ones. So we are hoping that there won't be those skirmishes in the dark spots going forward. I'm also hoping that the security will be truly unbiased and will be truly neutral in all these proceedings. So those are also all the considerations we have to look for.
So what we've observed over time is that sometimes it's not even as if the security personnel are not on ground. Sometimes you see them right before their eyes, certain things still take place. So I recall in the 2023 general elections, we've seen videos, we've seen where some supporters of some political parties or some candidates come right into the polling units and threaten, intimidate, other voters who perhaps they suspect are not, supporting their own candidate. And the police are right there, and they did nothing, And so when you see such things, you wonder whether the presence of the police officers will actually make any difference, in this polls.
Oh, they will. You also have to understand the plight of the policeman. The policeman is trained in civil, to handle civil affairs. That means that his first training, his first response is not to attack people or to violently put down people. Some of these times they have to wait on until the situation escalates before they can react. They also look at the deployment of
Mr. Kenny,
they also look at
the police are meant to enforce the law,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes. They also,
so where someone
let me get to this second point first.
All right.
They also look at the deployment. There are numbers there compared to the numbers of the enemy. You understand? And then in the final analysis, the end game is for the elections to hold. You understand? So there are all these factors that interplay. I'm not saying that sometimes, which is why I said at the beginning that let's hope that the police also remains unbiased.
Okay, well, I mean, it's fine that at the end of the day, we hope to see that the elections are conducted. Yeah. But we need to see the elections are not only conducted, but it has to be a credible process, that will produce the leaders. Because the tendency, when you have situations like the one I painted earlier, where you have, other people intimidating other people in polling units, it just simply means that it's not free. The process is not free. It's not fair, because everyone has a right to choose whoever he wants to, vote for. So that's a fact. And the police is there not to just watch what's happening, but to enforce the law. So where there are where certain persons are seen to be breaking the law, they have a duty to arrest. So I can understand that certain limitations are there, like you highlighted, but for how long are we going to, give excuses and count on those limitations as reasons why we are not doing the right thing? So it's very, very important that the police officers are equipped and they have a strategy that works, a strategy that will ensure that people are not intimidated. People do not feel, scared of voting for whoever they want to vote for, irrespective of what the polling unit arrangement is or the number of you know, the supporters of whatever political party, if you are in a polling unit that seem to be dominated by supporters of a particular political party, you shouldn't feel intimidated. You should be able to, you know, cast your vote. That's the whole idea of having a democratic system, isn't it?
Right.
Well,
exactly.
well, to speak to what you've said, the act of politics, or yeah, that's the way to say it, has actually deteriorated in this country over the years. I remember in 1992, during the famous June 12 elections, 1993, that we practiced the option A4, which means that it wasn't even a secret ballot.
Right.
You lined up behind your candidates, and there was the records of intimidation then were not as scary as what we have now.
In fact, what we are even seeing now is that some of the police officers are going as far as being complicit, providing cover and protection for those who are going to perpetrate some of these things that we're talking about, disruption of polling unit and so on. We've seen videos where police vehicles will escort actually people to go and disrupt the process in some instances, and they get away with it.
Yes, they get away with it. That is what so you look at the that's why I'm saying you look at those that are deployed to the polling units. May not be their fault. Okay, the police officers that were deployed to protect persons suddenly turn into enablers of crimes and felonies, yeah, because they are more loyal to the person they have been deployed to protect,
right,
rather than to the system. And you see, that's why I was saying, the person at the polling unit, the policeman at the polling unit will also look at his reinforcements. What are my numbers?
Right, okay. And you know, we're going to talk about security of the election throughout today's coverage because it is one of those key issues, especially where the Inspector General of Police has had to redeploy one of the police commissioners. And of course, you can see the police deployment to suggest that they want to cross all the T's and dot all the I's when it comes to security. But we're also happy to report that as at this time, just 30-something minutes, 37, 36 minutes into the elections as the polls open, accreditation has commenced in some areas. So we're just going to show you some footages across Bayelsa and Kogi where we can report that already. I suppose she's happy, you know, regarding what she's saying. But as you can see, voting is in progress in some polling units. And we're just going to give you more of those feelers during the course of our coverage as we report on some of those developments. In Bayelsa, for instance, it looks like, you know, we're seeing some of the pictures trickle in, Mr. Kende, that things are going on smoothly so far. Nothing negative to report. But we'll be happy to talk to Friday to address some of those issues around the boat capsizing and that kidnap of an INEC official. Friday, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. What do we know so far regarding what INEC is going to do about that boat that capsized with sensitive materials? And what can you tell us about the abduction of one of those INEC officials?
Yeah, good morning. About the boat that capsized carrying election personnel to Area 17, Kolokuma in Southern Niger local government area. Although no life was lost. No life was lost. All the election personnel, numbering 12, and the boat operator were rescued. However, loss of result sheets, power banks, and luggage containing personal effects of staff all were lost. Then the total number of registered voters in the affected registration area is 5,368, and the number of PVCs collected is 5,311. INEC is making efforts to ensure the conduct of election in the affected area. Then INEC also reports that it is XPU assigned to registration area 6 in Osoma in Sagbama, LGA, was abducted while waiting to board a boat at Amasoma Jetty. Security agencies have been notified.
Right. So we don't know we don't know whether any success has been made so far, because that was the statement from yesterday. But moving away from that
yes.
unfortunate incident, how is the mood in Bielsa today? To the places that you've been, from Yenagoa to all the other parts that you're hearing feelers from, what is it like today? How is the election shaping up?
The election in Yenagoa, lots of places, the next election is going on smoothly now, and places like Sagbama, and Ekeremo, like in Ekeremo, Unit 6, Ward 2, or Yak 3 of Ekeremo constituency, accreditation of voters have started already. And here, where I am now in Bragg, those sensitive materials, everything have arrived, the rack center, but the movement of materials is yet to take place because of there is the lack of a security presence. That is where the APC candidate came from, which is Okpoma in Bragg, Ward 4. And then also...
Go ahead, Friday. Go ahead.
Yeah, also in Southern Niger, Ward 4, or Lopobri, Southern Niger local government area, distribution of, they have distributed materials to various polling units already.
What about the security situation? What about the security situation, Friday? What about the security situation?
Yeah.
What do we know about the arrangements and how the police are able to deploy?
They have INEC, they have deployed security agencies to everywhere, but except that of last year, that the rack center, because of lack of security presence, they have started the movement of materials to the 17 units. But other areas, like I mentioned before, in Sagbama, security presence is there. Sagbama Ward Unit 6 or 10 of Sagbama also.
Okay.
Security presence is there.
Okay, Friday, what can you tell us about, INEC's own role in terms of deployment of materials? How early were they able to make these deployments, and at what point did it start, really, on the overall?
Yeah, the one I can say now, of Bragg, where I am now presently, because the materials have arrived here early at the rack center. Early enough of that of before 7 o'clock. Materials have already arrived in the rack center, but distributed to the various 17 polling units. That is where the problem lies. They have not started till now.
What about the turnout? What can you say about the turnout as of now, based on what you are seeing?
The turnout, voters are on ground. Voters are on ground in different polling units. Yes, but no sensitive material have arrived in any of the polling units in practice.
Have you had any complaints about people not finding their polling units or not sure where they're supposed to be voting? Because we've had that experience in the previous election, 2023 general elections, due to INEC's, reallocation of polling units of some persons. So is there such incident, and what is INEC doing to help those who are kind of lost, perhaps?
No. There is no incident, no complaint yet.
Right. And Friday, talking about your location, for instance, right? We know that Bielsa is divided between the riverine areas, right? It seems that you're covering some of those areas in the creeks. Just give me a sense of the political tension there and what you make of the mood today in those areas, especially as concern continues to simmer around possible tensions?
The mood, yeah, it's somehow stressful though. It's stressful. Like me, I arrived here yesterday in the afternoon, and everywhere was high. Outside the restriction of movement from first midnight yesterday, the communities in the creek, they have their own rules. So they too, they put a curfew from 8, like where I am in Brass, it's from 8. There is no movement from as of yesterday. So the move, everybody is ready to vote.
Right.
Everybody is ready to vote.
We're gonna have a very busy day today, Friday, and we thank you very much.
Before you go, what are the areas to look out for? What are the bases, or I would say the base of the major political actors in this election in the state? Where do we look out for, and where are the hotspots, sort of, in this election, in your own observation?
Okay, one of them that is in a Brass, which is where the APC candidate hailed from. I'm covering there, and I have some persons in Sagbama, where the deputy governor of the deputy governorship candidate from the APC, from the PDP, which is Sagbama, covering there. Then that of Olokboburi. That is Olokboburi, which is where the deputy governorship candidate of the APC hailed from. Then also that of Kolokuma or Kokoma, where the PDP governorship candidate hailed from.
Okay. Friday, stay safe. We know how tense and unsafe some of those situations can be. Try as much as possible to stay safe, and we will circle back to you during the course of the election for more update. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
All right. Thank you very much.
Listen, I don't know about you, but it feels like, we're off to a good start here, Mr. Kenny.
Usually it starts this way. I mean,
right. Or am I just being too optimistic about it?
I mean, usually when you start, it starts this way. Nobody is expecting any trouble as at around this time. It is when the elections are ongoing, political actors in the various polling units or the various wards begin to see where the votes are tilting towards. When the vote counting begins, and they see where it is tilting towards, that's where you begin to hear stories of disruption of the polling units and so on. So for now, yes, we are waiting to see. Maybe later in the day, that's when we begin to hear stories about uploading of the results on the IRF portal, perhaps stories about some ad hoc official not being able to use the device to upload properly. I mean, we saw how people were posting their pictures on the IRF in the 2023 general election. So hopefully this time around, the ad hoc officials know better how to use the device, So we hope to see, better things.
It's a good thing we have a handle from the riverine area. I think it's a plus for us that we have somebody there, because the elections in Bayelsa, the results that come from those creeks, those riverine areas, normally have a large impact on the final results, and that's when you have, like I say, and this is later in the day, that maybe they prevent elections from those areas from coming into, like we had in 2019, you understand, and that could have an effect, an impact on the final results from there. And then also the creeks are also the area where also the areas where there is high propensity for violence and all that. So we're looking to see. I'm particularly curious to see what will happen this time around in Bayelsa State, in that area particularly, and if there is enough security that has been deployed to that area.
And of course, it's still early days for the election, especially looking at the coverage area of Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa. We're able to get a sense of what's happening in Bayelsa. For the most part, we have some of those pictures, if we can share them with you, where accreditation is ongoing. In fact, in some polling units, voting has commenced, as we can confirm. And yeah, while there are some challenges regarding the presence of security personnel in some of those polling units, in other areas, voters were already there before 8 o'clock waiting for INEC officials to arrive. This is obviously the usual tradition that voters get there before INEC officials. We'll try as much as we can to get all our eyes and ears on the ground to give us a sense of what's happening, especially in Imo, where we also expect there to be a very keen contest for the governorship seat. This is the first time in Imo's history that it is conducting its election off cycle. Usually it is aligned with all the other elections in the general elections, but this time around the stakes are even higher because all eyes are on these 3 states, and security and the credibility of the polls is still the most talked about issues for most Nigerian civil society organizations. Have been happy on this one. Aiba earlier talked about redemption for INEC. I'm not sure whether they're going to convincingly redeem their image in the eyes of people who feel the 2023 elections did not live up to expectations, but they usually do well in off-cycle elections. What do you think? What do you think regarding how they're going to deliver this? I mean, it's just 3 states. They've been here before.
Yeah, it's 3 states, but it's 3 very complicated states.
Okay, sorry, before you hold your thoughts, before you give that analysis, let's go to Shefiu, who is in Kogi State, for us, for some updates there. Hello, Shefiu, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Well, good to see you after how many days now? Perhaps 3 days you've been away from the office. You can go ahead and talk to us about what are the latest happenings there where you are.
Okay. Okene is the hometown of the incumbent governor, Yahya Bello. It's also the hometown of the APC governorship candidate, Ahmed Ododo. And right now, we are at a polling unit called Agasa Apache, Okene, open space in Asubo area of Okene. And in this polling unit, it is expected that the governor will cast his vote any moment from now. There are 867 accredited, registered voters that are expected to exercise their democratic franchise here by electing a new governor. Among them, the governor of the state, Yahya Bello. Right now, as you can see behind me, accreditation is taking place of the registered voters, and thereafter, the election will come in. The atmosphere here is peaceful. There are a number of security personnel manning the process, and the people are also behaving themselves. There is calm, there is, the atmosphere is conducive, so to speak. A number of media organizations are also here to capture moments the governor will pass his vote.
Okay, and in talking about what's going on across Kogi State, what have you been hearing about the deployment and the safety concerns that people have going into this election?
Just like we reported today, there is substantial confidence building among the residents of the state because of the massive deployment of security personnel. I can tell you, before we get to our destination here, from where we were in Lokoja to this place, I counted not less than 15 checkpoints, and these checkpoints are manned by military personnel. At some of the checkpoints, even with the accreditation we have, the senior military officers identify ourselves individually before we are allowed to enter on our journey. So this is to tell you that there is very tight security regime here in Kogi as a result of this election. And of course, the entry of the state have been totally shut down as promised by the security authorities. On our way here, we saw a number of vehicles, travelers who have been asked to stop. Stop the journey because they are not permitted, to go into the state or to get out of the state. A number of these passengers include 5 heavy-duty trucks carrying, goods from the northern part perhaps to the southern or the western part of the country were stopped at that particular checkpoint. Right. So the restriction of movement was actually total because the security personnel, military in particular, are very, very serious about it. They don't allow any movement except you are accredited and you are permitted to go.
Right. And what about the turnout, Shafi? You just talked about that polling unit where the governor of Kogi State, Yabelo, is going to vote. Some 800 plus people registered in that polling unit. Give us a snapshot of what the turnout looks like in some of those areas that you've already visited.
Actually, what we witnessed is that there is large turnout of people, the voters here. As you can even see behind me, behind the camera, at the background, there are a significant number of people that came out to exercise their franchise. Particularly, it is impressive to see women. If you can see on this side of me, there is a substantial number of women, including elderly women, participating in the election. On our way here, through the polling units we passed, we also saw a significant number of people turn out for this exercise. So far so good in terms of turnout. It is pretty impressive.
Shafiu, one key feature in our elections here is the issue of voter inducement. Each time that there's an election, we see that happen, sometimes even right at the polling unit. What can you see as regards that? Are there any signs of anybody trying to induce anyone?
Well, so far we haven't come across any attempt at voter inducement. We haven't seen that happen. But then, as you rightly mentioned, elections, especially outside elections, are associated with that. For this state election is not an exception. The 2019 election witnessed essentially such voter inducement, and it might not be different from what we're going to see today. But so far, we haven't found or any incident of vote buying or someone arrested trying to induce voters.
Right.
So far, the situation here is calm and also ongoing.
Shafiu, where are the young men? Where are the men? I can see a lot of women behind you there. They always show up on election day. What is your reading of the spread of voters today? Women always find a way to show up on election day. Kudos to them. But would you say that there is a good turnout for young men and other groups in Kogi State?
Yes, we've seen young men also came out in vote, but then the number is very, very minimal compared to that of women, as you rightly mentioned. And I think this has to do with the tradition in Nigeria. You find out that women take this democratic exercise more serious than men, especially youth, who in most cases you find them on the street playing football and the rest of it. They don't take some of this exercise seriously. Actually, a very minimal number of youth here, including women. Men. There are also men, but it's a fraction if you look at the number of women that are here. So I don't know what exactly is the problem, but I think it's synonymous with elections in Nigeria over the years.
Another demography that is very important that sometimes we ignore is people living with disability. In the polling units where you are, what arrangement is there for people living with disability, and also perhaps the elderly as well, who are just making the effort to come out to vote. What can you see? What arrangement is there for them?
Right. Going by what the INEC commissioner in the state told us yesterday at the press briefing, the INEC as a commission has made provision for people with disabilities and, of course, the elderly. He said special arrangement has been made especially for the visually impaired people, to be able to exercise their franchise. A number of them have been trained on how to use the braille system, to identify the ballot, the ballot papers and those to vote for. But then here at this polling unit, I haven't seen anyone who is who is physically challenged, actually. But that was what we were told, that arrangement has been fully made for this vulnerable group. And of course, they are going to be fully accommodated in terms of getting them to exercise their democratic rights.
Right. Shafiu, this process is supposed to be seamless, accreditation and voting. Is that what you can confirm that is happening in that polling unit where you are right now?
That's very correct. As I said earlier, the queues are orderly. And of course, the INEC officials are also going on with the accreditation. Earlier, we spoke with the electoral officer here, INEC electoral officer, who told us that the exercise is going on seamlessly because there hasn't been cases of glitches. All the equipment they have are intact and they're working perfectly. So they are not exhibiting any possible technical hitch that could undermine the exercise.
Okay. Shafiu, thank you very much for the update. We do hope the governor gets there and votes in time so you can cover more ground for us across Kogi. Thank you very much for the update. Shafiu Suleiman from Okene there in Kogi, where, the elections have begun in earnest. Yeah. But to the point again, Aiba, the women always show up on election. They're the one group that you can count on to show up on election day.
Perhaps the women have some kind of structure, politically speaking.
They just take things seriously. That's the structure.
If you talk about mobilization, I think it's much more easier to mobilize the women than men, because they have these women groups, that they belong to, market women and so on. So even the politicians themselves know that when it's time for election, look for the women leader, and so on. It's easy. I just kind of feel that it's much easier to mobilize them to get to the polling units than the men.
But I also think, the simplest explanation is that women take, elections seriously in this country. If it was a Champions League game, I bet you all the young men in Kogi State would have showed up today, no matter how early it's going to be. But then again, unfortunately, this is one of those situations that we have to deal with. The low voter turnout, the voter apathy. Some of them, there are some push and pull factors that might be responsible for that. But also, there are certain demographies that usually do not show up on election day. And unfortunately, there are found much younger generation. Let's bring in our next guest. Mr. King there has clandestinely left the scene, but we're joined by Mukhtar Suleiman, who is a public affairs commentator, to help us navigate some of those talking points as the election continues to unfold. Mukhtar, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you.
It's always very interesting to actually come to the city during elections.
Right. This area is safer than any polling unit you can imagine.
That's always put it. But it's nice to always sit at this is a vantage point where you can actually see everything unfold from everywhere where it's happening. And it is because elections are actually at the core of our democracy as a country. So your ability to actually be omnipotent for all the to all the polling units where it's actually unfolding. Because if I am voting right now, I am only intimated with the activities of where I'm actually. But here we get to we get to talk to everybody, Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi State, which is actually one of the most interesting things.
So far, nothing out of the ordinary to report. Some few delays in the arrival of materials, and INEC officials. Security is tight. Your 2 cents on what has happened so far? So far, it's been uneventful by Nigerian standards. But what do you make of it?
I think it is too early to call. Usually the violence doesn't happen now. If we're being fair, even looking at the last general elections we just had, where we become scared. Where we become scared is toward when it gets to when the polling unit wants to close and votes won't start counting. They won't start counting votes. That's when things become a bit tricky. Security is one of the most trickiest things in these particular off-cycle elections, because these 3 states are some of the most, like, for lack of better terms, I could call them swing states. If these 3 states were part of the state during the general elections, these are big states you need to look out for, especially. But when you look at what the law says about security personnel activity during voting, especially around the polling unit, it sort of cripples the security infrastructures. Now we're seeing news that 20,000 police officers deployed, 30,000, and etc. So what is the value of it at the end of the day when these security personnel are not allowed to carry weapons 100 meters around polling units? So in what way are you going to, when we have crippled our security personnel in this manner, because this is what the law says. Well, why I'm saying limiting, crippling, when I say crippling, is because this is a human being, of course. And what structures have we put in place to deter the thugs from bringing in their own weapons into the polling unit? Because anybody can just, if you have your PVC, you can just walk in and go and line up. Nobody searches you, nobody checks if you have a weapon, but the security personnel are mandated by law not to hold weapons around the polling unit. And don't forget that security personnel cannot act without the directive of the presiding officer. So before, only the presiding officer, according to the Electoral Act, I think somewhere around section 50 or to 65, one of those sections, actually clearly states that the presiding officer has the exclusive responsibility to admit or decide to eject anybody from polling units. That means security personnel cannot do anything unless they get that. So where we have to, it's funny, but it's also because it's a democracy, and this is supposed to be a civil activity.
But the law doesn't stop the police, for instance, from having a strategy that will work for them.
It does.
So if you say the security personnel, the police shouldn't carry any weapon within 100 meters around the polling units, it doesn't stop you from having your personnel stationed somewhere, maybe not within the 100 meters, but at least somewhere close enough to be able to respond where there is need for.
I agree, but then the problem is not the security infrastructures itself. The problem is the presiding officers. In what ways are the presiding officers ensuring that, in what ways are we even ensuring that these presiding officers are not even partisan to start with? When electoral violence breaks out, our first go-to is, what is the police doing? What is the military doing? We're forgetting that the law says that they cannot act without the presiding officer giving that directive. So if somebody comes to a polling unit and is actually intimidating voters, for example, unless the presiding officer decides and tells the security personnel, expel that person from that polling unit, all the police officer can do is just take notes and make records. That's basically what they can do, just for their own personal reports.
From all that we've seen here, what are the lessons that you think we can learn from the 2023 general elections? And what's the likelihood that the outcome of that 2023 general elections will impact on the conduct of this off-cycle?
This election is more or less like a redemption for INEC. That's how I see it. INEC has sort of failed woefully compared to their promises from before the last general election. So they have a chance to get it right now so that we can build trust in the electoral system. Because if there is trust deficit in the electoral system, then the entire structure of our democracy is weakened. So we need to actually do more and do better. INEC needs to do more and do better. But in terms of lessons, I think it still comes back to what most civil society actors have actually been saying over the past few months now. There is need for us to go back again, sit down, take a look at the Electoral Act and review it all over again. There are certain things that needs to become statutory. For example, transmission of results from polling units to the IREV. Now, we know that the IREV is not a collation system. We're not that oblivious not to know, but it is to ensure transparency in the system and also build trust. The justice who passed his judgment at the Supreme Court said it. He said, while it is actually clear that the IREV is not a collation system, it is it's a system that allows citizens to follow. So INEC's failure to transmit that result is not illegal, but then it creates a dent in the democracy. Yeah. So I think that is also something, that's also one part that we actually have to look at. Isn't it also fair,
Mukhtar, to point out that we're only talking about the presidential election, but that every other election that happened this year was, you know, uploaded to the IREF.
I think cumulatively, all of the other elections do not amount to the presidential election.
Yeah, but we had more than one election, to be fair.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. But then, in fact, when you make an assertion like that, it sort of creates doubt and actually reinforces the belief that there was a discrepancy in the entire process. Because if the IREF worked for every other election, why didn't it work for the presidential election? What was so different about it? So these are questions that people are going to keep asking, because the election cycle it comes once every 4 years, and for this year we're more political conscious.
Okay, how prepared? You know, how prepared can we say the ad hoc officials, INEC officials, are at the moment? We saw how, like I mentioned earlier, that we were seeing pictures of people on the RF. You know, some of the ad hoc officials are, you know, just snapping their own picture and uploading it and all that. So with regard to how to use the beavers and all that, how much more have we done since the previous election?
I think the INEC public relations officer spoke to this in one of the sister stations some days ago, where he actually guaranteed Nigerians. But for now, I'm trying really hard not to take INEC's words hook, line, and sinker anymore, because they promised heaven and earth before the general elections, and that didn't turn out. But then again, I'm sort of going to try to excuse, although there's no excuse for it, but I'm still going to excuse the deficits that we had, some of those deficits, especially when it comes to seeing people's picture in the IREF and all of that. I think that it was a new technology that we deployed at that massive scale, so there was tendencies that there were going to be some mistakes and mishaps, and those were the things that we actually suffered. So I think INEC has picked up, according to the PR, the spokesperson for INEC some days ago, the INEC has actually done a retraining for its staff. But then again, I would not want to be so sure until we see the outcomes of these 3 elections and see how they go eventually.
What could go wrong in your view, whether it's in Kogi, Imo, or in Bayelsa State? What could go wrong here?
Primarily, the major concern that everybody has is the same concern I have, which is security. But then again, on the flip side, just to be fair to INEC, we also had the same fear in the Anambra elections last year. And for one way or the other, they found a way to actually get it done, and there was very minimal security issues. So we're hoping that they can do the same thing for this particular election. But tensions are, don't forget, in states like Kogi, tensions are very, very high, because the 3 major parties, the 3 major front runners, are from individual ethnic groups. So it looks like it's the ethnic groups that are fighting each other. So that is and largely since history, I'm from Kogi State. Kogi State have always been predominantly an ethnical driven politics. So now you have Ododo from the Ibira faction, you have Muri from the Igala, you have Dino Melaye from the Yoruba people, and this has always been one of the few things I've always been scared of about Kogi State politics, whenever these kind of things show the face.
We have up there in the graphics Abejide, so perhaps you might want to fix him inside your equation. Right.
Oh yeah, well, I'm talking about the 3 front runners. Abejide is also if you follow the elections, in my opinion anyway, let me put that out there, if you follow the elections and the campaigns and everything that have actually led up to this very day, these are the top 3 runners that actually have a shot at the
Okay, so talking about these top 3, what are the chances for each of them if you look at the outcome of the 2023 general elections, for instance? So you can, you know, this thing we called the leading party in the ruling party in the state, how much of it is it going to come into play in all this? And then we also have a PDP candidate in the person of Dino Melaye, you know, and all that. And when you put together with the ethnic card and all that, how is it going to play out, really?
Democracy is a game of numbers. That's how democracy works. So the people with the highest, especially with our kind of democracy, the people with the highest number of votes gets to win the election. Now, there's always been this debate. Yes, the Igalas have the highest number of local government areas, but the Ibiras feel like they have the highest population. Meanwhile, the Igalas have the highest number of, they occupy the largest geographical spread in the state. So I think that in some way, some people are hoping that would actually play out in this election. They will get to see who really have because everybody is actually aligning to ethnic.
Does it matter who the candidate of the party is at this point? I mean, we're looking at this ethnic card that we're talking about. Does it, you know, is the issue of the merit of the candidate.
That's the problem. That's what I'm saying.
That's
where I'm saying the problem is. Everybody is aligning ethnically. I have seen messages that are going around in group chats. Like I said, I am from Kogi State. That's why I'm sort of like very keyed into the elections currently. The people are sending messages like Ibira agenda, Igala agenda, Yoruba agenda. That's what everybody. So there's nobody sitting down to critically take a look, especially the large masses. People are saying, irrespective of how much they feel bitter about Yahaya Bello, it is very imperative that we retain the power in the hands of the Ibira people. The Igalas are saying, Yahaya Bello has done us very, very badly. We don't want an Ibira man anymore because it will just be a continuation of what of an Ibira people circumstance. We need to bring in the Igala people back again into the fold. So it's really sickening that these are the things that we're actually looking at as opposed to merit.
Yeah, I mean, this phenomenon is not something that's exclusive to Nigerians. I mean, even, in so-called developed economies, you have this whole situation playing out.
Oh, no.
Let me get to the point. Whether it's the Brexit agenda, you have a people who feel that immigrants are overtaking their country and things like that. And that's all part of the identity politics, whether it's in America, race relations, and the decision of what to do about illegal migration and things like that. Those are all issues that end up being us versus them. Ours might not necessarily be the same thing with what's happening in America, but it's all part of identity politics. But I just want to talk about the figures for a moment, especially in Kogi. If we can have the infographics of the votes that may likely play a significant part of it. I mean, you have a breakdown of Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi. But looking at Kogi State, one with, the second highest registered voters in that group, with 1.8 million people already with PVCs collected. You have just 99,000 plus uncollected PVCs. They have the second highest also in that group polling units total. So it's 3,508 polling units that will be used by INEC in this particular election. Give me a sense of what these numbers say about what may likely happen, especially when it comes to voter turnout. Because as big as these numbers appear, significantly in the 2023 general election, when everybody was voting for the president, for senators, the numbers were significantly very, very low. Do you think, voting in this exercise could perhaps see a spike in the voter turnout?
It will be very difficult to actually say. I know a lot of people that are currently in some of
even with the ethnic element in the election?
Even with that, I think, in fact, because of that, a lot of people are not going out to vote. A lot of people are really not going out to because they're scared that, they might actually lose their lives or their properties, or things are getting very precarious, especially when you find that INEC officials were kidnapped just yesterday night and nothing has been done to actually get them back. And INEC is just thinking about to just replace the officer and just move on. That doesn't make sense. So because you need to build trust in the system, and when you say you want to build trust in the system, you have to remember that there are actor-specific people who play a part in this particular system. It is actually also very sickening for me that in today, 2023, we are not connected fully by road in this country, that you still have to travel by boat to certain communities.
I mean, you have rivers that you can't.
Sickening part.
Yeah, but you have rivers that you can't build roads over.
I think if countries like Japan could build an airport on top of the ocean, I think we can actually build roads over the rivers. It just depends on if we want to allow development to get that.
We're just seeing a shot there, live feed of Governor Abelo arriving his polling unit in Okene, and of course we expect that he'll be casting his vote in a moment or two. It's safe to say that we already know who he's going to vote for, but he's one of those political actors, like we did say, that is influencing some of the developments.
He's the incumbent governor currently, so of course he has some large sway over the people. He has a mandate that has been tested and trusted once, because we all know that he didn't win the first elections. This man had already won it before he passed, and then he just...
What do you mean he didn't win the first election?
Well, the 2015 general elections, he didn't really win it.
His party won.
The result, his party won, but not him. People voted for Audu. If you ask people who they vote, by law you vote for the party.
Yes.
But if you ask an individual who are you going to go vote for, they went there to vote for Audu.
Yes.
Right, but you can't say he didn't win.
Well, I can
legally
say
he won.
No. Legally, you can say the party won.
No. Legally, he won. We can't adjudicate what has already been.
No. I'm not taking away.
The courts don't see anything wrong with that.
I'm not taking away what the court said.
So you're just expressing an opinion.
Yes,
then.
I'm just saying, based on my opinion, people did not rally for Yahya Bello in 2015 general elections. People rallied for Audu.
In fact, prior to the election, you could even say that the name Yahya Bello didn't ring a bell to anybody.
He was just a businessman who owned a transport and logistics company, Fair Plus, if I'm not mistaken, and he just decided to vie into politics. Even in the second general elections, it was a very brutal situation in Kogi State. Let's call it spade and not a shovel. Let's talk about the things that we see. We're not in front of anything.
But why do you think that many people seem to be very dissatisfied with the administration of Yahya Bello?
Well, I think largely is because, as a matter of personal opinion, again, let me say, based on my own opinion, I think it's because he did not inspire loyalty. That was where he failed. Yahya Bello would have been one of the best things that happened to Nigeria because he came in with this energy. He was a young person, and you could tell that he was one of the first persons who benefited of the adjustment of the passing of the Not Too Young to Run bill, because that sort of made him fall within the age gap to run for governor. So he was going to be the poster person for young people, for youth. But maybe he was scared. I don't know. Maybe he was new to this space. Everything just came all at once to him. So he felt the need to show power instead of inspire loyalty for him to actually get people to move with him. Like I said, he did not campaign for that election. If he did, he would have learned how to inspire loyalty from people. But he never got to, because he never got to campaign for that election, he never got to learn that skill that most politicians have. So that sort of made it very difficult for him to govern the state in a way that was people-led and ensure that people could feel like they were part of the government.
And do you think that lack of goodwill also rubbing off on the anointed candidate of
yes,
the incumbent?
I think so, because people who felt like, because politics in this country is a case of entitlement, people who felt like they were entitled to be anointed as running mates, who worked with him from 2015 till this particular time that he's living now, do not feel like Ododo should actually be the running mate. I know of a key Kogi politician currently, who is currently in Kogi anyway, whom if you ask him a little bit, you prick him a little bit, he doesn't want the APC to win because he doesn't feel like it's going to actually help the state in any way. But then again, on the flip side, who do you want to win? Because then, if we do not get politics right, if we do not understand that political positions are meant to humble you because of the responsibilities that come with them, we would never get political leadership right in this country. Okay,
it's safe to say that everything is in the hands of the hundreds of thousands of voters who will be voting today in Kogi State, deciding their fate, deciding who gets to run the affairs of Kogi State for the next 4 years. Would it go to APC's Ododo? Would it go to Ajaka? Would it go to Dino Melai or Abejide? The ball is in the court of the people of Kogi State. At least that is by design how elections are supposed to work, with all of the attendant elements shaping the conversations going into this election. One particular state that we haven't talked significantly about this morning in the build-up to this exercise is Imo State. So let's now turn our attention to Imo State, where Ajibade Praise is standing by for us this morning. Ajibade, good morning. Hopefully it's been a good morning so far. What can you tell us about how the election is shaping up across Imo State today?
Well, the election slated for today, being Saturday, 11th of November, has eventually started, and towards ensuring a peaceful poll has been put in place. Though monitoring the exercise, starting from the polling unit where I visited earlier this morning at Ikeduru, talking about Amimo Ward 012, they experienced a delay. There was a delay in the arrival of arrival of INEC officials. The electorate actually trooped out. I had met many of them who were ready to cast their vote, but then the INEC officials were not there as it was promised. they were not there because earlier on, INEC had promised that they were going to arrive on time at every polling unit across the state. 8:20 a.m. was the time they gave, and they are sure that by 8:30 a.m. voting will commence. Right here where I'm standing now at Central School, INEC just arrived a few minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, thereabout, and as we speak, voting is yet to commence. They are trying to set up their materials and everything, and maybe probably commence accreditation in no distant time. But as it stands, security situation within this place where I am now is intact. Security is okay, and there is no any breach of security, and the atmosphere is peaceful. Yeah. The electorate are eager to cast their votes as well.
Ajibade, what is responsible for that delay? I mean, it's already an hour past, an hour and a half past when elections are supposed to commence. Did INEC give an explanation as to the late arrival of materials as well as the officials?
Well, no reason has been given to that yet. Of course, the late arrival has been recorded. No reason has been given as to why they came late. And there is no also comment from INEC yet as to if they are going to extend the time of voting or not. As we speak, like I said earlier, voting is yet to commence. Maybe by the time they will start voting and accreditation, maybe they will tell the electorate what they intend to do with the time they've that has elapsed already that they did nothing with.
Okay, so what's the mood generally, if you can paint us a picture generally in the state and perhaps narrow it down to where you are? What is the mood? What is the tension? What is the political atmosphere like?
Yeah, political atmosphere here, I would say it's with mixed feelings in the sense that electorates are eager to cast their votes. On the other side, they are somehow being hindered from doing so because of the lateness of arrival of INEC at their polling unit. And I think to a reasonable extent, it's taught across virtually most of the polling units, I have to say, because some of my colleagues who are in other polling units have been getting contact from actually said INEC arrived late at their polling unit as well.
Okay.
Another thing we also noticed this morning while coming down all the way from, driving all the way from Owerri down to Ikeduru, where I am right now, was that there was heavy security presence on the road, massive security presence on the road, comprises of the army, the police, the DSS, and other security agencies in the state. Well, the security had promised that they were going to ensure a peaceful atmosphere, and I think they are doing that.
Okay. Well, we know that there's usually restriction of movement on a day like this. However, we know that in Imo State, that's where we had that fracas between the NLC and the government of Imo State, leading to the declaration of a strike in that state. Is that even having any impact at all, perhaps prior to today?
Yeah, the strike is that impact on the election? Well, I would say not really. But on the people, has it had impact? Yes, greatly, because Imo State has been in blackout for over some weeks now, over some days now, since the attack of Joe Ajero occurred in the state. The electricity supply in the state has been completely cut off, and the people have been living in total blackout in the state. So that, I will say, it had serious effect on residents of the state. Yesterday, the first PRO, Olumuyiwa Adejobi, actually briefed the press and said the IG has ordered investigation into the attack of Joe Ajero, and I think that development is kind of dousing the tension a little bit. The NLC leadership in the state actually, to an extent,
excuse me, to an extent, are having some form of kind of confidence that the matter will be investigated and the attack on their president will be prosecuted if anyone is actually found culprit doing that. I think that development to an extent actually is relaxing the tension bit by bit.
So if the state has been in blackout in the past few days, then it means a lot of people may not be able to monitor what's happening on the television and so on. People will have to rely perhaps on their, petrol to be able to power their generators and so on. For INEC, what arrangements are they making in the event that there's this blackout and then elections runs into the night? Are there arrangements for power? I mean, have the resident electoral commissioner spoken in regards to that? Because we know that there's every likelihood the process could extend into the night.
Well, it sounds today. Where I don't know that there is something that's happening when have to change what I start writing on the stage. Anything actually to do with lots of plans to provide that evidence. And provided some partners for themselves. So the reason where I am is that I don't think that legality issue as it stands right now, I'm not seeing any of sort around it. And especially they will provide that.
I think we're having some sort of challenge with connectivity there, but in fairness, I think we have a clear picture for now how things are shaping up. I think significantly is the fact that the deployment of election materials were not done in time. However, INEC will have to find a way to make amends because usually what happens is that they add whatever time was lost to the voting process to ensure that people have been given adequate time to take part in the process. Ajibade prays there for us in Imo State.
I wish we were able to hear what he would say as regards to the issue of power. We know that the evil things happen in dark places, and if, for instance, INEC does not have power in collation centers and places where they need them, I mean, we've seen situations where counting or sorting of ballot papers are done in the dark. Even right here in the nation's capital in previous elections, we've seen that happen. So I'm just curious about how that will also impact on the transparency of the process. You don't want people cramped in, in centers with no electricity, trying to sort out ballot papers and so on.
I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But I mean, seeing that it's just 9:30 now, and also as we did mention, this is just the governorship election. So you would think that time is of the essence, and they should be able to wrap up the counting because voting is supposed to normally stop at 2. So if you add an extra 1 hour 30 minutes, so maybe you're taking a look at maybe voting ending at 3:30, 4 thereabout. And that 2 hour, 3 hour gap should be enough for them to fast track the entire process. Plus, we have IREF. If it works, it saves you the stress of thinking there's going to be some sort of manipulation behind the scenes.
Hopefully everything goes by the book.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, your 2 cents there. Imo State, one of those states that we haven't significantly talked about this morning. It's also radioactive in terms of the political activities there. You talk about Yabelo not being on the ballot. I believe the people in Imo will tell you a lot more about, Governor Hope Uzodimma. But give me a sense of what you make of, developments in Imo.
I think one of the major problems that we've always had with INEC since time primordial, in fact, has always been logistics on the day of election. It's interesting to hear that you said they add extra time. I've never heard that happen.
Oh, they do. Usually, I mean, the standard procedure
usually for most of the time, the closing is the polling units by 2 is usually the standard. So, but people already on the line will be allowed to vote however long it takes them, but they will close it by 2 o'clock. That's usually been the standard that INEC has always done. It's really, really interesting how
so even if you have more than 1,000 people on the queue,
once you have a million people on that queue, by 2 they close it. They close. That means nobody else can join the line anymore. But those people will be allowed to vote until it's concluded. That's usually been, I know that that's usually what INEC has done. It's usually very funny how they find it very easy to implement the closing time, but never implements the opening time of the polling units. So,
and I think all of that adds to also the issue of the integrity
of the process, yes, because it's something that we've actually, because you could hear how authoritatively 2 days ago the spokesperson for INEC was categorically saying that the night before, because yes, yesterday night we heard that sensitive material that already left CBN and they had already been deployed as at yesterday. But then what's the cause for the delay this morning again? So it's a lot of, there's a lot of moving parts in the entire system. Now, I'm hoping that we will not get to see situations where there'll be inks will go dry in the polling units, or that people who came to vote would have to be the ones to bring their generators to power lights at the polling units. Because, and another thing I would want to also tell Nigerians is these people who are conducting the elections are Nigerians like you. And we should try as much as possible to also protect them as much as we can when we meet them at the polling unit, because, excuse me, because they also care for the tenets of the democracy, and the people who should actually be more stiff with should be the core officials, such as the presiding officers of INEC, the people, the resident electoral commissioners, all of that. These are the people that we should actually pay attention to, and as much as possible, if people can. If you can, it's still your constitutional right. After elections leave, ballots leave the polling units, go to the rack center and see how you can actually follow up with your vote to ensure that until it has been announced by INEC, you followed it up to the very end and your vote actually counted in the elections.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. Just to draw attention to one thing, right? We've talked about, for the right reasons, I suppose, over the past 2 decades, the elections has left much to be desired, right? And we have every reason to be critical. We have every reason to even be pessimistic about some of these developments. But as much as we talk about what could go wrong, what could go right with this election if the police does the right thing? Because we see the body language of the Inspector General of Police, for instance, is to react to the concerns of the people. When the Labour Party raises an alarm with regards to the activities of the police commissioner, and also the NLC drew the attention of the IG to how he may be, in bed with the Imo State government, how he was rightly deployed, just to address those concerns. What could go right if everything goes according to plan?
I think INEC should just duplicate what they did in Osun and Anambra before the general elections. That really, because if you remember, we don't speak about those elections anymore. Because why? They went well. They were boring elections, which was good. What we want is a boring election, uneventful. It should go the way it should go. It should go the way it has been stipulated by law and by the guidelines of INEC. That way, nobody gets to make any uproar about it. It was easy for the courts to actually declare the elections for Adeleke in Osun State when Oyetola went to court. Why? Because the letter of the law was followed,
not the tribunal.
And the guidelines as well were followed. To the tribunal was a bit confused about the technology, but the technology was later explained at the Court of Appeal. So it was easy it was seamless, basically. The entire process was almost seamless. And even Oyetola knew he had no case at the end of the day when the case got to the Supreme Court. But because if you follow the letter of the law, and then INEC also adheres to its own guidelines, because INEC arguing in court that its guidelines were not binding by law, sort of shoots them on the foot, because then you're invariably saying that people should not follow the guidelines that you have actually outlined for the elections, because there's no illegality to not following it. Because if you're not responsible for the guidelines that you set for yourself, then I have no responsibility to follow the guidelines that you have set. So I think that is where INEC needs to go. And another thing that I think that we need to do as a country is to see how we can go back to implement some parts, maybe not all parts at once, but some parts of the Justice to Waste report. And one of the key parts I would actually always say that should be implemented is that INEC should be responsible. The burden of proof of whether an election was good or bad, whether it was transparent, should be on INEC and not on the the candidates. INEC should be able to come to court and defend the system that it has actually put in place and say, yes, we conducted a free and
but
fair
isn't that what they do? I mean, they're defendants. They are defendants.
They are defendants, but they are not. See, the burden of proof is not on them. The burden of proof is on the plaintiff.
Yeah, but that is how our judiciary is structured.
I agree. I'm not saying that. That's why policies and laws are amended. That's the point I'm trying to make. The judiciary structure that way does not necessarily mean they're not extenuating circumstances. When the burden of proof is on the plaintiff, because this is an extenuating circumstance. So if you, the point I'm trying to, I'm coming. If you take me to court,
so we can save time. He who alleges must prove.
I agree.
So the whole concept, the ideology behind that is so you can avoid frivolous litigations. Because if you're saying INEC has to conduct the elections, declare the winner, and say because in the process, that is what INEC is doing. Before they pronounce you as winner, they are basically saying this is how you became a winner. There is nothing more to prove.
No, there is.
What is there to prove?
There should be, because if I am questioning the system, the person who mans the system should be able to come and defend its system.
But they are defendants. But they are defendants.
No, they are not active defendants. Okay, the burden of proof is still not on them. The point I'm trying to make is the burden of proof has to be on them for them to actually do well. Because now we all keep saying INEC is compromised. And that thing that I actually think should actually be a thing should be INEC should determine who its chairman should be by itself. INEC should also determine who the Rex should be by itself. The president, who is already partisan, should not be allowed to declare who the chairman is and who the rest of the... With how much complaints the citizens had about how the last general elections was conducted, I don't think Professor Mahmoud should stick it being the chairman of INEC. Not because there's any proof out there that questions his integrity, but because it's a democracy and the people who you say...
So the next question you would ask is how does that happen? I mean, if in a democratic system like this, with a constitution that empowers the president that much, how do you get INEC to determine its own chairman?
Policy reforms.
Process? How?
Policy reforms. INEC's chairman should come from probably a director that have years of experience in the service. I don't know how I'm not really very clear on how the entire structure should be, but eventually, because the president
because
should
it almost seems impossible.
Yeah, no, it's not impossible. I don't think it is impossible.
Yeah, somebody has to point someone.
I think if someone has to confirm someone. Someone has to give.
The House should confirm.
But the House are also politicians.
Yes.
The House are made up of politicians.
But that is why there are different political classes in the House, not just one.
But the majority will still have their way.
Not just one party. No, but this house, no party has a majority to pass anything without alliance from any other party. For this particular assembly that we have, APC has the highest number, but they don't have 2/3.
Yeah, but they do have the majority.
They have the majority, but not 2/3. For you to pass a policy in the House, you need 2/3. They don't have 2/3 of the Senate, unlike before. So now they still need to make alliances with other parties. That is the beauty of democracy. The ability for people to come, for you to say you have to go across the board of your party to actually get the other party to support the policies that you're actually putting on the floor. That is actually one of the beauty of democracy. Now, how these things will be structured will be left for the professionals to do that. But I believe that there is a way to structure it. That INEC would
do we have a model right now? Do we have a model
to draw?
That's why we set precedences. We set precedences.
Just to draw attention to the recent development in the National Assembly that perhaps irked members of civil society and other Nigerians who say this is not the right way to go was when the president nominated 10 new resident electoral commissioners, right? The same house that is divided between APC, PDP, and Labour Party in the Senate approved their confirmation.
Agreed.
When we also know that there are people who are partisan in that list.
Electoral commissioners.
So to the point you're trying to make, it doesn't work. That bipartisan divide that may perhaps allow for constructive criticism, it didn't even happen because they got the confirmation.
I think your assertion that it doesn't work sort of undermines it sounds as if you've given up on the tenets of the democracy that actually builds the country.
saying that what you're alluding to is already not working.
I am saying
the fact that the opposition in the Senate didn't push back.
When that happened, a lot of people had a lot of uproar, especially from the CSO space, of course. We had a lot of uproar about it, that it was wrong, it was undemocratic. Of course, nothing happened because, like you said, the bipartisan House legislature passed and approved this particular person. Now, what is going on in the House is it's tricky for us to actually say this is where it is, but we're waiting for these election periods to be done, for appointments to finish, so that the governance system itself can kick in proper, because we all know that it starts from next year. We all know that it starts from next year before the budget is passed and everything. That's when we begin to see the people wear their political hat properly. But I still believe that with enough pressure from the citizens, from the CSO space, these systems and structures can actually be put in place, and then we can actually find a way to ensure that we can strengthen our electoral processes to ensure that our democracy, the outcomes from that electoral process can actually strengthen our democracy, and people can actually trust and believe that, yes, when somebody wins an election, the person actually wins the election, and there'll be no need for unnecessary litigation. Again, I still stand by my point. INEC should be made to be, the burden of proof for elections should be on INEC. If they are responsible for the burden of proof, it allows them to be very, very transparent, so that they can have plausible deniability for anything that might actually come up after the elections have been conducted.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you suggesting that INEC should take themselves to court?
No. If there's a case in court, the burden of proof whether the election was free and fair should not be on me. So it should be on you who conducted that election.
Okay.
Because why? This is why. Now let me give you an example of where there were a lot of issues in the last general elections. Labour Party and PDP went to court about that there were discrepancies in the beavers. And INEC had already wiped the beavers for the gubernatorial elections. Now there's no access to any of the metadata to prove the point that Labour Party had. Now they have no proof. Now if the burden of proof for whether that election was free and fair, trust me, INEC will find where to store, because it is possible to store the metadata
there was a court
before
order
it is wiped.
That gave them
wipe
access.
the data.
No, to also give PDP and Labour Party access
after the metadata had been wiped for the gubernatorial elections, because the court order for the metadata to be wiped, for the not for the metadata, sorry, for the beavers to be wiped, for the beavers to be wiped for the gubernatorial election came before the access was given.
Yes.
Now, when the data was wiped, now I'm telling you now, when data was wiped, the metadata went along with it. I am saying if the burden of proof was on INEC, the metadata will be stored in the cloud somewhere where INEC can know that, we have this proof, just in case anybody takes us to court, we can always bring this back and show you that this is a breakdown. You can bring a data analyst, a computer data analyst, to come and look at it and agrees that, okay, there was no sabotage on the beavers and everything went exactly as they were planned. Because it is appalling, really, for us to actually say that, because INEC has too many too many parts to play in the election for them to own no responsibility. Now, they go to court with the defendant, but they play no active role in the entire litigation process.
But I also think that that's a stretch, because INEC also, just like every other defendant in any case, will also have to open, their arguments. They also have to present evidence. They also have to present witnesses.
But the burden of proof is not on them.
No, so but that's what you're doing. When you're defending yourself.
No.
When you're defending yourself.
I'm defending myself based on the evidences that you present in court. Now, you are telling me.
Because you are the one who is alleged.
Let me tell you how the legal case is now. I did something to you, or I did something. I gave you. You don't have access to all the information of what I did, but I'm telling you that you should prove what I did and what I did not do.
Yeah, because I'm the one who is alleging that something wrong happened.
This is a very. I'm coming. This is a very.
What will it take
that's why I said
to get this
That's why
thing
I
done?
said there's already a report that detailed out how to do it. There's Justice Waste report. Now this is why I said there are extenuating circumstances in legal matters. This is one of those extenuating circumstances. Why? Because not doing it that way sort of dents the democracy, the democratic process in its entirety. So if you want to really build trust, if that is your intent, and not because of pride, and not because of self-preservation, but you want to build trust because the independent National Electoral Commission should really be independent, then they should have that burden of proof. So if I take INEC to court after a general election, in fact, but if INEC has that, if the burden of proof is on them, and they have all the proof and data all cases will die at the PEPT. Because when they come up with overwhelming proof, evidences, you have no case to take to the appeal court, to the Supreme Court anymore for presidential election, or the appeal court for gubernatorial elections.
All right, well, we would continue to see how this pan out, and we'll continue to press for some of these amendments that we need to see to make. At the end of the day, it's about making the electoral process much better and transparent, and for INEC to have that independence and be able to conduct credible polls for the people. As it is now, for many people, trust on INEC is at the lowest ebb, if you may, coming from the 2023 general elections. Yes, on the other hand, we've seen improvements in the conduct of the elections. People have given INEC kudos, given the number of offsets that we've seen in some states and so on. But these processes will never end. We will never come to a point where we say, oh,
there's always going to be something new.
It's always a work in progress. Exactly. We do have, you know, some data that we want to share with you, just a breakdown of deployments and how the elections across Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa State today is being affected by the deployment of certain logistics. So let's just quickly take a look at that data that covers security, that covers various logistics. So for this election, you have over 46,000 INEC officials, Aiba, you know, across these 3 states, and 8 national commissioners of INEC have been deployed, with 27 resident electoral commissions, all to add value to the process to ensure compliance and whatnot. 1,500 FRSC personnel, 35 vehicles, including trucks, tow trucks rather, and ambulances to be deployed. In Kogi, you have well over 4,000 police personnel. In Imo, 25,565 have been deployed to Imo. 3 Deputy Inspector Generals of Police have been deployed, 220 patrol vehicles. Talk about overkill. The NSCD is deploying 26,600 personnel. The Nigerian Army, well, in classic fashion, is failing to declare how many of those, but we already know that they are pretty much everywhere. So it's safe to say that this is something that, you know, we can afford at this time because it's just 3 states, right? So the recipe for success is there, but does this in any way guarantee the deliverables?
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I was about to say. It's one thing to deploy these resources. Yeah. It's another thing to get the value for the resources. So when we say we deployed 40,000 personnel to Kogi State, to what end at the end of the day? Because we heard the military and the police make a lot of threats during the general election. Oh, if you run with ballot boxes, you're running with your life, you're playing with your... There were a lot of threats. And it all amounted to almost nothing at the end of the day, because we did not see those videos that circulated of people getting shot with ballot boxes. Later we got to use Google reverse imagery to find out that these were videos from, I think, elections in other countries, not even in Nigeria. Not even an old video of a Nigerian. We saw outright videos of people in Lagos who were threatening people at the polling unit with the presiding officers present, and nothing was actually done to those particular people. The level of impunity for people to have to think they have the right to actually do those kind of things. So now that we're seeing 40,000 police officers or personnel deployed to just one particular state, I think we'll watch. It is very difficult for us to say. I would not want to tell INEC that they are not going to do a very good job. I'm just hoping that at the end of the day, they can do something well. Like I said from the beginning of this conversation, these elections that are holding today are a way for INEC to redeem itself from the failures and the mistrust that they've actually built after the 2023 general
What about
elections.
the 18 billion they're getting for this election also? Because we didn't factor that in, but it's also a big part of the conversation.
You see, it's really, really crazy. You see why I say burden of proof should be on them, Abi? Look at how much resources are being deployed for you to actually conduct an election. We know that elections are expensive. I would not be stupid to think that elections are not expensive. They are supposed to be expensive. But are we getting the value of money? And for us to get the value of that money, come and prove to us in court. The burden of proof should be on you that, we gave you 18 billion, we gave you 40,000 policemen who left their families, risked their life to come and defend your system. Come and prove that your system actually worked to the benefit of the general public, which it was supposed to do.
Victor is very passionate about because
at the end of the day, INEC is not the only body that is going to be responsible for what happens.
Yes, but
at the end of the day, they are going to be working with other stakeholders. So you could have situations where INEC is doing everything by the books, but then you have other fifth columnists, if you like, also pulling some strings.
Whatever it is you want to call it, INEC is the umpire. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. There's no excuse. You don't give me excuse for your failure. The world does not reward efforts. The world rewards results. So don't come and give me excuses for your failure. But according to the Electoral Act, this is your job. This is your one single job. Conduct elections. Don't tell me that you had other stakeholders. It was your job to know those stakeholders.
But it is also
it was your job to manage. It was your job to manage those outcomes and those situations. Find better ways to do them.
But to be honest, right? To be honest, right? And to be also realistic about what goes on. INEC's duty is to organize and conduct elections. Yes. It does not guarantee security. Okay. It does not in any way control the factors around the political atmosphere. INEC can all INEC can do is to deploy and make sure that the processes and procedures that have been put in place for the election as designed by INEC goes through. End of story.
No. Don't forget.
INEC doesn't have the right to stop people from attempting to steal ballot papers.
No. INEC does. That's what I'm telling you. Go back to the Electoral Act. I've forgotten the section. And somewhere between, I'm giving you a range. So you don't.
Are we talking about electoral offenses?
Somewhere between. I'm coming.
About presiding officers.
Yes. Somewhere between Section 55 and Section 65 of the Electoral Act, it is stated there that the presiding officers have the responsibility to admit or expel. Now, when you look at the guideline, when you look at the guideline more critically, if anything happens, if there's any, these were issues that we dissected during the general elections. We discussed these things very openly. The security personnel are not allowed to bring any form of weapon in 100 meters anywhere around polling units. I'm coming, that's one. Secondly, if anything happens, it is the responsibility of the security personnel present there to report to the presiding officer, and the presiding officer to also channel it up. All of the process, because I'm coming. This is a civil process.
We have situations where presiding officers themselves, or even INEC ad hoc officials, I mean, we're getting reports from Bayelsa, for instance, about an ad hoc official of INEC has been kidnapped, abducted at the moment.
Agreed.
We've had situations where ad hoc officials of INEC, presiding officers and so on, themselves are intimidated,
threatened,
and they're threatened, and so on. We've seen that in previous elections.
I think
so it's not as if the presiding officers can actually, they are that powerful.
They're not. I agree with you.
Now, and so on. I think you're misunderstanding.
At the end of the day, the security also have to be top notch.
I think you're misunderstanding my position here. I am not taking away the humanity of these people. I'm not trying to dehumanize them and say they should jump in front of a bullet. These are people's parents or people's brothers, people's family members. They are human beings. But at the end of the day, you should know the responsibility that you are taking, what you want to do. That is where patriotism comes in.
And if you're going to
decide that this is your job and this is what you want to do. Now, not just you. When I say you now, when I speak in singular, I'm speaking plural, talking about INEC as the entire structure, from the chairman to the gatesman, or whoever opens the gate at the office. It is their responsibility to ensure that that security is, you know where you are sending these people to. For me, I don't think that presiding officer that was kidnapped at in Bayelsa, I don't think, if you hear the story, it was a boat that was going, they were conveying security materials, election materials. That person should have been escorted with at least 5 different armored boats.
Mukhtar,
vehicles.
We know that.
I don't think, because we know the pain points.
Let me paint a picture here. We know that the presiding officers themselves derive confidence from what they see. And how secured they feel in polling units.
Agreed.
Now you have a polling unit where you said yourself that the police officers or officials are not allowed to be carrying weapons.
Exactly.
100 meters around that place.
Yes.
How confident do you think a presiding officer will feel where he's been threatened by party agents, for instance, who seem to have a lot of supporters and numbers around that?
This is why
polling units, and then you have perhaps only 1 or 2 security personnel who are not even armed.
Yes, agreed. We from the beginning, I said it, that we've crippled our security at polling units. That was my first position when we started talking.
But for good reason.
And I agree. It's for good reasons, because before now, we said the thugs come in, they overpower the security and they collected their guns. So the law said, okay, fine, don't bring guns at all. Now, that's why I said there need to be certain structures put in place to ensure that people do not even come in to the polling unit environment with anything that can be misconstrued as a weapon or that can be used as a weapon. That's on one side. Secondly, for the INEC officials, the presiding officers, feedback mechanisms should be made so seamless that when anything is happening, they can instantly alert those people who are outside the perimeter that can come in with their own weapons. But that's not the case. We're still relying on him having to pick up a phone and dial a phone number or something. They should make it very, very seamless. These are the things that needs to be done. Presiding officers should also not be compromised. You mentioned it. Some of the REC officers that have actually been deployed for these particular elections are it's already obvious and it's everywhere that they are compromised. So we need to find ways to change most of these things. Now, do they change overnight?
Compromise is a strong word.
Well, they are compromised.
They're not neutral. You can say someone is not neutral, but you can't say they're compromised.
Well, they are already openly partisan in an election where parties are campaigning for, are vying for an office. So I don't know how else to define compromise, but I'm going to use your word. They are not neutral. That's for the sake of they are not neutral. But I don't think that it's going to be something that we can do overnight. I think there are levels and layers to these things, but it comes back to us to take a look at the Electoral Act again. Because see, the Electoral Act sort of changed the ball game of elections. And now we are seeing some of the loopholes that we did not pay attention to while the law was being passed last year in February.
Right, okay.
So I think we can actually review, we can take a second look at it again, and then see how we can actually close these loopholes, because that is the only way we can strengthen. I don't think we can get to a place where we say it is absolute, but I think we can get to a place where we can say we all agree that this is okay. Okay.
Work in progress, at least that is one thing we all can agree with on this particular table as we take a quick break to perhaps digest a lot more of the information coming in right now as we continue our coverage of the off-circle elections in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa states. This is, of course, where you need to be if you want to keep tabs on some of these developments. We have reporters on the ground reporting from the various polling units across all of these states as voting commences in earnest across all the 3 states. We can confirm, not in every polling unit, but significantly, most of those polling units have been open for accreditation and voting, and it is going on concurrently, seamlessly, so far as we can confirm. We'll take a quick break. Mukhtar Suleiman, thank you very much for the spirited conversation. I know we'll circle back to this point and still, fast track some of the points that have been argued this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always good to see you.
No problem.
Right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back in a short while to continue our coverage of the elections. Join us again.